Tonight, county sheriffs are investigating a body found near State Road 276. Passerbys discovered the unidentified female in the remote Maidenwater Springs area, 38 miles north of Lake Powell. Investigators are calling the death suspicious, and they encourage anyone who could help identify the woman to step forward.
In June of 1998, a grisly discovery was made near Lake Powell. A woman bound by rope and duct tape and placed in a sleeping bag wrapped in carpet.
The highway is just a two-lane highway, and some passerbys, they saw something sitting there that looked suspicious to them. So they stopped and they walked over, and that's what they discovered, that it was a body. They called the police at that point.
The body offered little forensic evidence that could point to identification, and due to the remote location, witnesses that could provide crucial details were scarce. Providing additional analytical resources to the Garfield County Sheriff's Office, the Utah Department of Public Safety's State Bureau of Investigation began assisting with the case. Despite the best efforts of all involved, the investigation would go cold.
They worked it pretty actively for almost 2 years. As far as the evidence goes, they processed it the best they could. They chased down every lead that they could. They went to the public. They did everything possible that they could do. But it just went cold. There was no fingerprints, there's no DNA, there's no witnesses.
For the next 2 decades, as forensic technology improved, evidence was retested. Each time, another breadcrumb of information for investigators.
We had everything processed again and again. We actually employed a not expert. We did some isoforensics testing. It analyzes, the hair of the victim to tell them geographically where they were from, the water they're drinking and things they're exposed to. Still coming up with nothing. There was just nothing found.
In 2018, the NBC News investigative program Dateline profiled convicted serial killer Scott Kimball. As part of the profile, Dateline produced an online video highlighting Kimball's connection to the Maidenwater case. Despite the nationwide spotlight, Agent Davis didn't receive a single tip. Frustrated by the lack of results, he turned to local media outlets for help.
I didn't know what else to do, so we went to the media. The actual photo of the victim had never really been released yet. I mean, sketches have been released, but sketches only get you so far. So we had a photo of her face, and she was deceased, but it wasn't a graphic photo, and we released that to the media. About half the media outlets released it and half didn't.
Seems like another bust, right? Not quite. It's exactly 5 days later that a detective in Youngstown, Ohio, working his own cold case, uploads a never-before-released picture into a national missing persons database.
So Youngstown Police Department had just been contacted by NamUs to say, can you update your missing person database? This detective took it upon himself to start really working these cases. They had this missing female. He was aware that she was from Mexico, so he contacted ICE. There's a photograph of her that ICE had taken, and he takes that photograph and puts that into NamUs. So after 20 years of this case being open, what's the chances that we released this photograph the same week that Youngstown, Ohio released that photograph? Pretty amazing. So call it a coincidence, call it whatever you want. It was just the planets aligned for us.
Then, just days after that, all the way across the country, a woman in California begins to connect the dots between the two cases.
So our photograph went out from here, from the media. This photograph hits NamUs from Ohio, and there's a female in California. As she's searching through this forum, she'd seen our media release, seen our photo. And then she happened to come across, in the NamUs database, she'd seen this photo. She's like, oh, that looks like it might be a match. I get an email from dispatch. Someone may have made this connection. And when I saw the photographs, I'm like, yeah, it looks pretty good, right? And one thing in particular that was really telling was we knew that our victim had a mole in the upper right ear. In this photograph of the missing person, of Lena, you could see that mole in her ear. That's what really made it look promising.
Now, 20 years later, investigators are zeroing in on an identity. But how could they prove it? Again, they turn to local media for help.
We're like 95% sure this is her. So that was great, but it puts us in a predicament. How do we now identify her? our only real option was DNA. So, okay, well now how do we find family of Lena? So as I talked to Detective Sweeney in Youngstown, he's like, well, let's do a media release. She may have family in Texas or, Mexico. And all it said was, we're trying to locate family of this individual. Please, if you know, please call us. And it was about a week, just over a week later, Youngstown, Ohio gets a voice message in Spanish.
Hola, soy Lucero Reyes. Creo que tienes información sobre mi hermana, Lina.
Lucero, who says she's his sister. Now she's able to initially corroborate some things about Lena, a birthday and things like that. We're like, oh, we think that this is probably a sister.
Faced with a whole new set of challenges, Agent Davis began the difficult task of acquiring a DNA sample that could finally provide an identity.
She lives in a really small town and very humble circumstances, so DNA it scared her. But she kept asking all these questions, and so it was basically we said, well, if we want to know for sure, we need to have your DNA. It's the only way that we can confirm this. So she agrees.
With Lucero on board, SBI agents arranged for her to make the over 300-mile trek to the nearest U.S. consulate, where authorities were able to collect the DNA samples.
They get there, he does the swabs on their cheeks, and he ships those to us here. So as soon as I got that FedEx shipment, I had the sample from the ME, I took it to the forensics lab, and we did that analysis. They emailed me and said, yeah, it's a match, it's her sister.
Finally, an answer. Not the answer that Lena's family and friends hoped for, but one that breathes new life into the investigation, into how she ended up in Maidenwater Springs, and who is responsible for her murder.
We know who she is. We want to know, what happened to her, who did it to her. And you just have to be persistent, because you never know what little thing's going to break it for you.
Estoy bien agradecida con el estado de Utah porque me han apoyado, tanto como el gobierno aquí. Me han apoyado como no tiene idea. Lo primero lo que quería, lo más grande, lo que anhelaba era encontrarla a ella. Tal vez no me la llevo como espera. Y a jefes de policías, a los detectives. No tengo con qué pagarles todo lo que están haciendo por mí y por mi familia.